care. Oh, okay. That's all right. I am Marla Dean. I am the former CEO of Early Childhood Center here in the district that serve children and families experiencing homelessness. So I'm so excited and honored to be in space with each of you and two real champions of this work that are going to introduce themselves in a second. But again, as you come in, please place your name, your pronouns, your organization, your role, position, and where you are situated in the world right now. We love to know who's in the room, the house. Thank you all. So with that, I want to bring this champion to introduce herself, Rakaya. Rakaya is, let me get it right, Rakaya, I want to make sure, even though I know you well, she is the Director of Early Childhood Systems at DC Action, and she's a member of the Under 3 DC Coalition. Rakaya, why don't you give us a little bit more about who you are, what you do in the world, and just let us know.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Marla, for that warm introduction. I am, everything is in my life is early childhood right now because I had a baby 9 months ago, who is, I'm sure will make maybe make a cameo at some point in this conversation. But yeah, I live in DC, have lived here for about 10 years now, and it's the best place in the world, I think. My family are Palestinian immigrants, and that colors a lot of how I see the world. So thank you all for having me, and I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit more about what we've been doing in DC.
Excellent, thank you. And we have another one of our team members, a hardworking young lady, Hope from Spaces in Action. She's running from one place to another, and she'll join us shortly, and we'll stop then to bring her into the conversation. Because she hasn't joined yet, has she? No, I don't see.
She's on.
Oh, Hope.
I can't hear you, Hope. I'm not sure why.
I don't see Hope. Oh, there you are, Hope. Hope, yes.
I'm just testing my speaker.
Got it. We can hear you now.
Okay, so it's our signal. It's not the computer. Okay. Hello, everyone. I am Hope Joyner. I am one of the child care champions with Spaces in Action. I am born and raised in DC, did a short stint in North Carolina, but I'm back now and excited to be back home. And I've been working in the early child care education as an organizer for 2 years now. And I'm a new bonus mom, so I don't think that early learning childcare was as important to me before I became a bonus mom, but now it's basically number one on my list, and I eat, sleep, and breathe early learning childcare.
Thank you, Hope. Glad you're here. I know you were running from one location to the next, and I'm glad you made it here. So much wisdom to share with us tonight. We want to hear from you right out the back. Right as we get started, we want to hear about the wins that you're excited about this year. If anyone wants to shout out a win that they've had in their part of the world, this is the time to share some of those wins. Come on off mute, share. Okay, people are being shy because we got momentum going on in this country. I want to share a few just to get you thinking about what's happening on your area of the world. So Parent Voices California helped advocate for the inclusion of key child care provisions to overhaul family fee structures and reform payment rates in the state budget. The approved budget includes, listen to this, $2.8 billion to boost subsidies to care for low-income children, as well as a cap on family fees of 1% of family income. The state's agreement with Child Care Providers United, a union that represents 40,000 home child care providers across the state, and a coalition partner of parent voices resulted in California's commitment to using a cost estimation model to develop a single rate structure for child care providers that will be informed by providers' true cost of care, rather than outdated market rates that date back to 2016. The agreement also includes the first retirement fund for licensed family child care providers in the country. That's something to celebrate. Can we celebrate that, please?
That took us 3 years for the family feed. We fought for 3
Hallelujah.
years. Hallelujah. Glory.
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 Okay.
Glory to the power of women. Glory to the power that women can move this sector, and we are going to do it even more.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to give one more. I want to talk about Isaiah's Kids Count on Us Child Care Coalition in Minnesota organized community-based child care centers to secure over $1.17 billion in new ongoing state funding for child care and early learning programs. This historic funding increase is the first step on the path to transforming the state's child care system so that it is affordable and accessible for all families, high quality for all kids, and a career path for child care teachers. The funding will add 1,000 new child care and early learning slots for children, increase reimbursement rates for the Minnesota Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, establish a new Great Start retention payment program, payments for every child care teacher and provider in the state, as well as establish a new state agency for early childhood and family programs. Let's celebrate Minnesota. Okay. I want to give it one more chance for you to share. Is there a shout out or a celebration in your part of the world? Okay.
New Mexico, we won the Constitutional Amendment 1 passing, also for the free and accessible childcare and to increase teacher wages.
Thank you. Thank you, New Mexico. Excellent. More excitement. Anyone else? Okay. Well, we want to move on with our conversation this evening, and we want to begin with a land acknowledgement. So, in recent times, land acknowledgements have become very popular, but there's a discussion about them. And so EcoTrust is an organization out of Oregon who have said this about land acknowledgements, and I do think it's worthy of our consideration and being very thoughtful about this. We do not want to be performatory. We really want to be real agents of change. And so they have said that land acknowledgements have come under criticism in many corners of the indigenous world, calling them performative, token gestures, and therefore largely meaningless. In place of a land acknowledgement, EcoTrust staff, and especially the Native staff, are asking you to support indigenous communities by taking action. We ask that you, now here are some of their call to action. And I would love for those on this call to join in reading them. I'm going to start with the first one, but please come off of mute and read one of the others. So the call to action for Indigenous communities includes, number one, give land back to tribes. Anyone would like to read number two?
Protect the environment. Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Marquise, you were about to say something?
Oh, I was going to read the second one.
Please.
Okay. Protect the environment and solemn.
Salmon, yep. Mm-hmm.
It's hard reading off this phone. Hold on.
That's all right.
Insist that the United States respect tribal sovereignty and uphold trust responsibility to tribes, which includes appropriate levels of federal funding to support tribal needs. Many promises to tribal nations still need to be kept.
And I just ask, as you speak a little slower because we do have interpretation going on tonight, and we want to make sure. So I am going to repeat. So protect the environment and salmon. Tribal cultures depend on them. Insist, number three, that the United States respect tribal sovereignty and uphold its trust responsibilities to tribes, which includes appropriate levels of federal funding to support tribal needs. Many promises to tribal nations still need to be kept. Anyone would like to pick up with number four?
Yes, I would. Elect officials and judges that understand tribal governments, relationships, and law.
Thank you so much, Paulette. Number five, anyone?
Invest in the tribal economy.
Thank you, Fabiola. If I messed up your name, please apologize. I'm sorry. Thank you so much. Number six.
Challenge and reject all stereotypes about Indigenous people.
Thank you, Rakaya. Appreciate you. Number seven.
Insist that your children and grandchildren are taught accurate information about the histories, cultures, and contemporary lives of Indigenous people in your school system, and
Inform
Thank you so
yourself
much,
about
Lynette. Okay, go ahead, Abdel.
inform yourself about issues impacting Indigenous communities and speak up.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for taking this moment to reflect on this. I think this is all very important. The sovereignty, well-being, cultures, and languages of Indigenous people are born out of their homelands, and that makes these lands and waters precious to Native communities. All of us have the responsibility to treat them with respect and care they deserve, and to steward them carefully for the next generations. Please, let's all of us do our part. Thank you so much. Today's purpose. So the purpose of this webinar, I thought, okay, the purpose of today's webinar conversation, I don't like saying webinar, I prefer for it to be a conversation, is really to talk about the winds that are accruing across the country and the one that we experienced in DC. We're very excited about the work that happened. I'm very excited. I happened to have been selected for the DC Council's task force on pay parity for early childhood educators, but also to talk about what is the work left undone and the process that it took. What have been, some of the lessons learned so that others can hear and we can share and we can keep momentum going, and so that we can really develop a system that works for every child and every family in this country. So with that, we are going to get started with Rakaya. So Rakaya, how are you today, this evening for us on the East Coast?
I am well. I'm on the West Coast today and enjoying the sunshine in San Diego.
Okay, don't rub it in. Yeah, okay, because we don't have sun, and we definitely don't have any nice weather. So Rakaya, tell us, what did we actually win in DC? What yeah, start there. Just let us know. What did we actually win?
Yeah, we won. And when I say we, I mean early childhood educators and everyone who benefits from the work of early childhood educators, which is providers, businesses, children, families, anyone you can think of. We won uh, pay parity for early childhood educators, which means parity, similar salaries or the same salaries for early childhood educators as DC public school teachers who have the same role, credential, and experience. So that means if our teachers in DC public schools are required to have a bachelor's degree, and our early childhood educators are required to have associate's degree or a CDA. And so they receive equivalent pay based on their role, credential, and experience. And I can show you what that means in a second. But that means that for the majority of educators, we expect to see a 30 to 50% increase in their salary. And that is a permanent increase. And I'm happy to show you guys what those numbers look like on the next slide.
Yeah, so what are the actual numbers, and what is this pay scale that you're speaking of?
Yes. This is the version in Spanish, and I am going to look at the version in English because that is my primary language. But if you look here, these are the minimum salaries that early childhood education programs are required to pay their teachers if they participate in the Pay Equity Fund. And I want you guys to know that in the first quarter, we are in the first quarter of this program this year, over 75% of providers, close to 80%, have opted in. We expect that number to go up, but the vast majority of folks have opted in and are required to pay their teachers the salaries you see on the screen. So in DC, an assistant teacher is required to have a CDA. So you can see that the minimum salary that they would get paid would be $51,000. And a lead teacher is required to have an associate degree, and the minimum salary they would be required to be paid is $63,800. And then you can see that there are salaries above and below that in each of those roles for folks who are on their way to getting their credential, and for folks who are like, I got my credential that was required and I wanted to go beyond that. And so they're able to get paid more for that credential.
So I heard you use the word if they participate. What did you mean by that?
So in DC, and I think in DC to do this program, it had to be an opt-in program because we couldn't require that private businesses pay their staff a certain amount of money that's different than the minimum wage in the district. And so what we had to do was make it an opt-in process. So that means your child care facility had to say, I want to participate in this program, please sign me up.
Okay. And I know we're going to get into this more, but what are you hearing, or what are you aware of as the major reasons why a provider might not participate?
There are a few reasons. And the first, I think the biggest one is folks don't want to be in contract with the government. And I think that is a hard transition for folks who don't have a subsidy contract or who don't have an agreement already with the government. It's just something new. I think folks are worried that it will be burdensome, that it will create extra challenges. Yes, this is just for DC. Create extra challenges for them. And so that is one big reason. But there are other smaller reasons, not smaller, some of them are smaller. One that's also big is folks are worried that they participate in this program and it will go away one day. They're worried that it will go away and then they won't be able to keep up the salaries that they promised their staff. And so they are worried about that. And because for that reason, I think it's really important to note that our Pay Equity Fund is a permanent program. Technically, any program can be cut, and any program in the world can be cut, but ours is a permanent program, and funds automatically go into the Pay Equity Fund for early childhood educators, and they stay there. So sometimes when you put money in a fund, they just go away at the end of the year if you haven't spent them all, but these dollars stay there. And so if they aren't completely spent by the end of the year, then they continue into the next year so that we can keep using them to benefit our early childhood educators.
So you talked about, the funding of the programs, of the fund and sustainability. So how did DC pay for this? What was the funding mechanism?
So this was a really expensive program, and we knew that it would probably be at least $60 million to get started. And now we know it's much more than that. And so we knew that we weren't just going to find that money sitting around, that someone had money that they weren't spending and that we would be able to use it. We knew we would have to raise new money. And our coalition, and I'm going to go to this next slide, our coalition has principles around how we raise money. And for us, it's really important that when we are asking for more money, that we are adhering to all of these principles around making sure that any source of money that we get is equitable, so it's not changing to the negative, making folks who are poor, or make folks who are wealthy wealthier. Instead, we want to reverse that. We want to use our taxes and revenue that we raise to make those who are struggling, to give them more opportunities and more resources, and to those who are doing better than most, to make sure that they're paying their fair share. We wanted to make sure that racial justice was in the center of things, because we know that those issues that I just raised about equity are often tied by design to race because of racism in the history of this country. And we know that folks who are have more economic barriers tend to be Black and brown folks. And we know that correcting our tax structure and correcting the way that our resources are distributed is really important to achieving racial justice. That's really important to us. We also knew we wanted to make a big change. We didn't want to put our necks on the line raising money for something small here or there. It had to be something big. And I would say that paying our teachers fairly is a really big thing. And a really needed thing. We also wanted it to be winnable, and anything that we advocate for, we make sure that it's something that we can actually win. We don't want to set ourselves up for failure. We want to make sure that it's ambitious, but at the same time, it's something that we actually can achieve, because everyone is putting their volunteer time and effort into making this happen. And finally, we really value collaboration, and that when we are working on getting money or moving a policy, that it's actually in collaboration with other folks who are thinking the same as we are. So for us, it's really important to be in partnership with other organizations advocating for economic justice, racial justice, gender justice. And so we make sure that when we're asking for something, it's aligning with what those folks are asking for, so that we're not competing. We want to be in partnership. So that was a long way of answering your question, Marla, because what we ended up doing is we asked to raise taxes on the wealthy. And so what we did is we said that we know that in DC, wealthy folks pay more than middle income folks and low income folks combined. And so we wanted to make sure that that was the way that we wanted to correct that inequity in our tax structure and use that correction to go even further in correcting injustices and to pay our early childhood educators. So we raised taxes on the wealthy, which I am very proud of. And we ended up being able to fund not only early childhood educator salaries, which is what we're talking about today, but we also were able to fund housing for folks who had housing insecurity, and to expand the earned income tax credit, which serves as a basic income for the lowest income families in the district.
Thank you, Rakaya. Thank you for sharing that. I think we want to give a little bit of context to DC. DC is a fairly wealthy city, and the racial wealth gaps are stark. The racial wealth gap between Blacks and whites in this city is 81 to 1. So white people have 81 times the wealth of the average Black person in the city. And so this is really a way of thinking about how to raise funds in an equitable way to tax the wealthy. So thank you. Hope, I haven't forgot about you. So Hope, could you come and tell us about how did we win? What organizing took place on the ground to make this happen? And Hope, before you do that, could you tell us a little bit about who you are? We know that you work for the phenomenal organization Spaces in Action, but give us a little bit more about who you are.
So Hope stepped away. This is Destiny.
Okay.
I'm a childcare organizer with Spaces in Action. So the question was how we were able to do this. So on the ground organizing, it looked like doing a bunch of email blasts and phone calls to centers within DC, to just do introductions, to come in and meet them. We also had information for them, one-pagers, handouts to get them, equipped with the information. And then we also have this thing that we do at Spaces, where we do a storytelling journey, where they're able to, say who they are. They could be an educator, they could be a provider, how long they've been in the field, what do they value the most about being in that profession. And then we ask them to state the problem, and then what could be some solutions. So in this past performance oversight hearing, we were able to get over 100 educators speak to why the Pay Equity Fund was so important. We were also able to appreciate and put educators on the front line for a day without childcare that just passed this May. We did a 5-center tour, where we were able to, just kind of film them in action, tell their stories, show the work that they do every day, remind them that they are special and remind them that their voice matters, whether it be a written testimony or a live testimony. And also the walk-ins that we did to the Wilson building, to show the importance of why early learning education is so important.
Did we lose Hope? Destiny. We might have. So I'm going to go back to Rakaya while we figure out what's going on with Hope and Destiny. Rakaya, can you give us a sense of when this all started, how long it took? Give us the timeline of this.
Go ahead.
Okay. I know that one of our elders in this work would say that it started in the 70s in the district. And I think that is true, but we can tie it more tangibly, I think, probably to at least 20 years of work, when the district decided that they wanted to pass universal pre-K for all children 3 and 4-year-olds in the district. And that happened in 2009. But in the work leading up to that, in the years leading up to that, the district was really hoping to do a strategy that supported kids, not only 3 and 4-year-olds, but children from birth until age 5. And just the political will was really more focused on pre-K. And so that's what happened at that time in 2009. And leading up until then and since then, the community has continued a slow churn, making sure that we're getting to the point of getting back to those 0 to 3-year-old children and their families, who need the support of the district, need the support of our city, of our country. And so that is the short version of how we got here. But I would say it took at least 20 years of work. I'm going
to come back to Hope in a second, but how did the DC Council Task Force come about that really started to operationalize what this was going to look like in real dollars?
Yes. It came actually, and I think I have to go back a little bit, but it came out of a lot of the organizing that we were doing. And it was because, I mean, if you look on the screen, I've shared a few of the things that we did as a coalition to try and get this into the law and to make sure that we had funding for it. And if you look on the screen, you can see we had this was in the middle of the pandemic, so no one was going into City Hall. So we had a child caravan where we drove around to council members' houses, and we showed up. You saw, I think, let me scroll back to that first slide. We showed up to their houses and told them, hey, we need you to vote yes on this issue. And here's a little onesie for your daughter. And we're going to be watching you when this vote comes around.
Well, can you stay there at that picture? Because I think for those who don't know, that is Council Member Robert White, who at the time had one child, I think, maybe.
I think he just had his second.
He just had his second. And you're in front of his house, a coalition with this caravan going to council members' homes. So yes, okay, yeah. Keep going.
So then we did a few other things. Did I already pass them? Yeah. Sorry, guys. So we did that child caravan. Our policymakers weren't necessarily listening to us. So we were like, let's bring them to us. They're not bringing us to them, so let's bring them to us. So we hosted town halls with each council member to invite them to hear from members of their community, the folks that they took seriously and that mattered to them. So you can see on the top right, it's Council Member Trayon White, who I think was one of the more beautiful of these town halls, where he sat in this room filled with aunties in his community who told him, this is what you need to listen to, and this is what you need to care about. And he was blown away. He was like, I can't believe this is your experience. This matters to me so much. And he was one of the council members who voted yes. But you can see other strategies that we did were that we were trying to raise taxes. So we needed to educate our community about taxes. So we did a tax justice teach-in. We did some videos. We did a hearing on revenue because, again, the council wouldn't bring us to talk about revenue. So we were like, we want you to hear from us that we want you to raise revenue. So we had our own hearing. We released data. We had petitions. We released op-eds. So out of all of those actions, to answer your question, Marla, out of all of those actions, we realized that there wasn't a lot of, there was still some disagreement amongst our community about what we wanted to see in terms of how we paid educators. And as we were talking to council members, there was some disagreement from them about how they wanted to see it happen. So I think one of the really wiser things that happened in this process was that we were like, let's push for it. We're going to get what we want, and then we can figure out how we're going to make it happen. And the council, what they did is they created a task force to solve those problems. They said, okay, we're going to give you your money. Here it is. We're putting it in this fund. It's going to be protected. It's going to be safe. And we're going to convene this task force to think about what are all the things that could come up in the process of paying educators. What are all the ways that we want to think about honoring educators, the amount of money that we want to give educators, the criteria for paying them higher salaries. And so they convened this task force of educators, providers, advocates, economists, funders. Who else am I missing, Marla?
Did we have parents?
Did we have parents? I think we did have parents.
Yeah, we had some parents. We actually had parents. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So we had a big group and we came together to think about all of this. And so a lot of what you see in this conversation of what we ended up with were recommendations made by the community in collaboration with our state agency, OSSI, which I think was a really wonderful way to do it. Because a lot of times what happens is you get a law passed and then it goes into a dark room and people make decisions about how to put things into effect. And in this case, we were able to have some say in what that looked like, and not even just a little bit of say, quite a lot of say.
Yeah, and Hope, I'm coming back to you in a second. And so I happen to be one of the people appointed to that task force. And the good thing, as Rakaya said, it was subject to the Open Meetings Act. So that meant that anybody could listen to it. It was virtual because it was during the pandemic, which meant that people could be actively engaged. So it was quite, and it spanned over a good amount of time. We talked about what types of skills should look like, who should we be comparing in terms of credentialing. We also talked about compensation more broader than pay. We talked about other, compensation is about, vacation days. It's about healthcare. It's about really worker wellness. And so we were able to have that as a public conversation. That is still an ongoing conversation today, but at least we started down that road. I hope you're back now, or Destiny. And I really want to hear about how you activated the teachers and the work that you did. So could you continue to tell that part of the story?
Hey, everybody. So Destiny and I are both here. So a few different ways that we activated the teachers. Number one, we had to work on really having the hard conversations with them about what the problem was and who was willing to jump in and help fix this problem, right? Because a lot of times people will complain about a situation or a problem, but nobody wants to actually jump in and do the work. So we started off by having the hard conversation about, are you interested in helping fix this problem, right? And so after that, we started doing storytelling sessions. We did it in the coalition with Under 3DC. We did it with our staff, and we did it with several different organizations throughout the district. We did some in Ohio. We actually had a few teachers come in from Ohio to talk to the educators in DC about why it was important to actually advocate for themselves through storytelling. The storytelling session, we were able to figure out and create a rubric that breaks the storytelling session down into 3 different parts. And what it does is it humanizes our educators so that people don't look at them as babysitters or just educators, which is that one hat. It really the storytelling session allows people to, or the council members, the government, to put a face with the name almost. They're able to identify who they are, what their self-interests are. And that was one of the biggest parts that we did to activate our educators. The next thing is that we started asking them to get involved and actually take leads, helping to organize other parents, other educators, because no one center, no one ward can do it on their own. It takes it's power in numbers. And so we worked extremely hard to help and to teach parents, educators, directors how to organize other parents, teachers, and directors, because it's the whole model of each one teach one. So we were able to help teachers build up their leadership skills in public speaking, writing letters to the council. We had over 100 letters. We had over 100 letters hand delivered and handwritten to Council Member Mendelson's office. We were able to visit centers regularly so that we kept them engaged. We kept them in the know with what was going on. And again, I want to thank Rakaya and the Under 3DC team. They were able to jump in and educate us and keep us up to date on what the policies were. And as a result of that, we were able to then go into the centers and keep the educators up to date with what those changes in the policies had been. So storytelling, keeping in touch, building real relationships, and really personally investing in our educators is how we kept them active in this fight.
Thank you, Hope. So just for a few things, just so for context, Councilmember Mendelson is actually the chairman of the DC Council. So he really controls what comes to up for a vote and all kinds of things. He has a lot of power. So having him being really active, being in touch with him and educating him was really important to bring him along in that process. I also want to say, I mean, Hope, it's no small thing when we think about early childhood educators getting involved in this, because I mean, it's scary, right? It's not necessarily a safe thing to do. DC is an expensive place. Pay was low. And you could be concerned about losing your job, or in some cases, even your status in terms of immigration status. So there was a lot on the line. So I just want to let you know that those who had the most to gain were very encouraged in that, showed extreme courage in this process, and we want to thank them for that. And then lastly, I heard you talk about providers and parents. So if you're a parent, you're thinking, wait a minute, I already can't afford childcare. We're going to pay teachers more. So do I want to be a part of that? So educating parents to understand that it was not going to impact them was also a big part of it. And bringing parents and providers and teachers all in coalition was a big part of the great work that Hope and her team and Spaces in Action did. So thank you, Hope, for sharing and giving some insights into the hard work that you did as you went in and out of center after center after center and making sure that everyone was being brought along. Rakaya, I want to talk revenue strategy with you. Tell us about, how did you think about revenue with values informed it? I mean, you talked a little bit about it. And you kind of talked about your ask, but I think there were 3 things that you really wanted to focus in on. So can you just talk a little bit more about revenue strategy?
Yeah. One thing that I wanted to note about revenue was that policymakers don't want to raise revenue, and we were in an election year, and so we showed you that photo of Robert White. Robert White was running for office. I think he was running for mayor that year. Is that the year? Yeah, and he did not want to look bad. He wanted to get the votes. He didn't want folks to look at him and say, oh, he's going to raise taxes on me. And so it was really important that we put a lot of pressure on them, because from their perspective, they were like, this is just putting me in danger. And so so some of these tactics that Hope talked about and that I shared were the way that we pushed them. And I think that's really important, because everyone's going to say no at first. The second thing is that, well, I guess related to the first thing, is that we wanted to create some level of cover for those policymakers, because they were going to say, oh, well, it's a dangerous move for me. So we did a poll and we asked DC residents. We hired a polling company, we did all the fancy things, and we asked the DC residents, do you believe that we need to invest more in childcare? Do we need to bring down the cost of childcare, like the tuition, and also to boost wages for early childhood educators? And 80% said yes. And so we were able to share those results with the council to give them some cover, to say, look, you're worried about not getting elected because you vote on this issue, you vote yes on raising taxes. Well, actually, most folks want you to do this. And I will say there wasn't a lot of pushback in our community, surprisingly, about this, because we did a lot of work to organize not only our community to come out and talk about why it matters to them and how they would benefit, but also extended members of our community to say, hey, I'm well off, tax me. And this matters to me, and I think it's important. And so we organized folks who had higher incomes. We organized business leaders who shared that they would benefit because their staff wouldn't be being pulled out of work all the time because they didn't have reliable childcare. So those are a couple of things. The other thing I want to note about revenue is that policymakers, they want us to be focused. And so we have a lot of things we want out of them. And one of the things that they wanted us to do was to tell us what is our top couple of things. And so that's part of that value that I shared with you all earlier about collaboration. That was part of the strength of that value. It was important for our values, but it was also important because when we were able to hone it down to 3 asks, the council was like, I see what those 3 things are. I can see what they will do. And I can vote easily knowing that those are all significant things that will improve our community and help strengthen our community. And that I'm not going to put my neck out so that you can give a penny here and a penny there and get it all washed away. So those are just a couple of things about revenue. I think I shared the values earlier. I think that's the biggest thing. And so we're in DC, we have the advantage of some flexibility in the way that we raise taxes, but I know that there are some states where there are various barriers. So I want to acknowledge that we do have our own particular circumstance, and so it was important to us to take advantage of all the flexibilities that we had, and that's what we did.
Thank you. So, Rakaya, I hope let's move to implementation. So what have we learned? What have you learned? What have you heard out there in the field about implementation? So, Rakaya, specifically, what has been the hardest thing to keep your win tethered to the values that got the win now that we're implementing?
Well, I will say that power tends to want to divide us and tends to tell us that you have to, if you want to get anything through, you just have to suck it up, let a few things fall to the ground and move forward. And we've been confronted with that choice over and over and over again, and we've refused to take it. And so an example that I'll give is early on in the pandemic, we were advocating for this money. We knew we needed at least $60 million. Our policymakers were telling us, we don't have any money, it's the pandemic. And we were like, cool story, we're gonna ask for what we need and then we'll see what happens. And we got not $60 million, we got $76 million. So that's one thing. Other things in implementation are, for example, there have been moments where folks have been afraid. There's a lot of fear. So providers have said, we're really worried that if we give folks lump sums of money, which is what we had to do in the first couple of years because we had the money sitting around, we didn't have all the systems in place, but we wanted to make sure teachers got it. So we sent them essentially checks of $10,000 to $14,000 in the first year, and then we had quarterly payments after that. So there was a lot of fear among providers. They're like, my staff are going to get checks and they're going to leave, and then I'm already understaffed, I'm not going to have staff. So they wanted there to be an agreement from staff that if they take the money, they're going to stay on the job. And from our perspective and our values as a coalition, that's coercion. We don't want to coerce people to stay in their jobs. They're getting the money because they do an important job, because they've been undercompensated for too long. And so we're not going to put requirements on them to be able to take that money. And so that was something that we pushed back really hard on, and we were successful in convincing our state agency to not put that in. And there are a lot of other things like that have come up along the way, where we're often being asked to choose one group's needs over another group's needs. And it's really important for us. And the reason that we're in coalition together is so that we can all see each other and keep each other's priorities at the top of the list, rather than letting folks' priorities like family childcare fall to the ground because they don't have as much power or as much strength. So it's really important to us that we say no to those false choices.
Thank you. Hope. So you're out there in the field. What are you hearing right now from child care providers about implementation? And what are the obstacles along the way, both to the win and to the implementation?
So a lot of educators are expressing the fact that they don't feel like it's fair for the funds to be directed to the center directly. They prefer that the funds go out directly to them, the same way that the first round of funds went out. And that's one of the biggest concerns that we are hearing. I think the second part of that, as far as hurdles go, is making sure that the centers, one of the concerns that we're hearing as far as hurdles go is that
Leave me alone.
It's so muted.
I know.
If you
Go ahead, Hope.
educators want to make sure that they are being, that the funds that they are receiving are correct, and that they're not just getting a minimum amount based off of their employment. They want to make sure that they're being paid off of how much time they've been at that center or family home. They want to make sure that they're being paid off of the value that they bring. They want to make sure that they are being paid off of their qualifications. And so those are some of the hurdles that we're facing when it comes to people just talking positively. They want to receive the funds and they believe in the pay equity fund, but they do also want to make sure that they are not just receiving the minimum, and that the centers are not just holding back the funds that they feel like they are entitled to.
So help me to understand a little bit more. So the reason why they want the funds to come directly to them as opposed to go to the center and pass through in their paychecks is because of the concerns you just raised. They want to make sure that they're receiving all that they're justly due. Is that what you're getting from this? Or is there another reason why they want the funds to come directly to them?
No, so you said it perfectly. They want to make sure that they are getting the funds that are justly due to them, due to their time and effort.
Okay, excellent. So thank you. So Hope, what is ahead? Where do we go from here? What is the next fight on the horizon? What do we need to be thinking about? Just share with us what's next.
I think the next few things that we need to make sure is making sure that we get out in front of the council to ensure, especially the mayor, to make sure that there are no additional cuts made. To make sure that there are no additional cuts made, we want to make sure that we are asking for those additional funds to be added to. We want to make sure that we have those additional funds added to the pay equity fund. Give me 1 second. I apologize. As you mentioned, I'm in the middle of moving a few different things around, so I apologize.
That's all right.
Yeah, but we want to make sure that we get in front of them to make sure that the mayor doesn't have any additional cuts. We want to make sure that we get in front of requesting more funds into the pay equity fund this year. So those are some of the big wins that we're looking at getting in front of for 2024.
So Hope, also, can you tell us what has been the impact of this on family child care and FFN, family friend neighbor care? Can you share with us those impacts? Did we lose Hope?
Say it again, Marla. I'm sorry. Yeah, you went out.
No,
I didn't.
no problem. No problem. I said, can you share with us what has been the impact on family child care or family friend neighbor care, child care? Can you share with us those impacts, if any?
So impacts. So I think some of the biggest things are just making sure that the educators are not staying around just to receive the pay equity funds. I think a lot of teachers are experiencing educators are receiving the funds and then they were leaving directly afterwards. So it's just making sure that educators know that this is going to be an ongoing fight and that they're committed to actually staying in that fight for the long term, because it's not something that is just going to be, we get it one time and then we don't have to continue to advocate for ourselves. We know that we are going to have to continue to advocate for the cuts not to be made. We're going to have to continue to advocate for that $16 billion for the child care stabilization. So those are not any short-term goals. Those are goals that we will have to continue to stay in the fight for. And I think that's one of the things that we have to just keep in mind, and that impacts the educators, because they have to realize that it's not something that they can just advocate 1 year or a few months and we're going to have those changes. That's not how it works, unfortunately, as much as we would like it to. That's just not realistic. You know, we're asking for $25 million in funding to compensate educators according to their experience. So that we have to make sure that the educators are meeting their requirements, that they're being able to get in that support and documentation so that their centers and their family homes have it on file and that OSSI has it on file. They have to make sure that they're timely and that they're following up when they get correspondence. So I think those are some of the impacts that we're going to have, that we're going to see come down through the child care centers and the family homes. And then I think the biggest impact is just making sure that the educators, directors, and the parents know that this is going to be an ongoing fight. It has been and it will be, unfortunately. We wish that we could wave a magic wand and have this fixed, right? But we know that that's not realistic. I think a bigger part is just making sure that we have that we're setting correct expectations for educators to continue to fight and advocate for themselves.
Which is a big ask, right? Because it's a tough it's a tough job, and so to leave your job and then go out and continue to fight is a lot. Rakaya, you what you tell us what is next? And hope throughout some numbers. 16 billion, 25 billion, 25 million. So she went from the federal need to kind of the local need. So what else is next in the policy space, and what's next on the horizon for the fight?
Yeah, so when we started this work, we didn't have good data. We didn't even know how many teachers we had. We just knew we had a lot of teachers who weren't being fairly paid. And so, well, first of all, I realized I did not talk about one really important thing, is that one of the things that we won was healthcare for childcare. And so one of the things that was included is all staff of child development facilities. So if a child care facility, it's family child care or center-based, all staff, so not even just educators, everyone who works there is eligible for free or low-cost insurance. And if they're residents of the district, then their families are also eligible for free or low-cost insurance. And for a lot of those folks, it's free. So that is something that we're really proud of. And Marla mentioned this earlier, that in those conversations at the task force, we kept bringing up benefits, and we kept reminding folks, we know that salaries are the easy thing to solve because it's numbers, but that's not enough for actually honoring the work of our early childhood educators. And actually one person said to us later on, you folks at Under 3 DC talked about healthcare every chance you got, whether it was appropriate for the conversation or not. And because of that, that's why it got added in. And so I really want to just name how important not letting go of things that matter to us have proven to be. So in terms of what's next, we've gotten a long way down our journey, but at the same time, we know that the cost of this program, and it's really important to think about this when you're thinking about compensation, is that the cost will continue to go up. And that's because of inflation, the cost of living goes up, so the cost of folks' salaries needs to increase. When we put standards in place in the district for folks' education level. So educators have to have, like I mentioned at the beginning, a CDA or an AA. And as more teachers get those degrees or even get higher degrees, that means they're eligible for higher salaries, which means the cost of the program will go up. And so I think that's $30 million we're expecting it to cost. And I think what Hope mentioned earlier, the $25 million was just the cost of inflation on our early childhood educator salaries. And then the last thing is, while we got a long way in this work, we haven't gotten everywhere. And what Hope mentioned earlier is that we still aren't paying our teachers for their experience. So our original vision and what the task force recommended was that we not only pay minimum salaries to teachers based on their role and credential, but that salary increases over the years as they gain more experience. And at the time of the task force, it was something that the agency felt was too complicated to implement because they didn't know how to validate experience. And so we have continued to push on that and hope that in the next few months, we will convene a second task force to solve the problem of experience. But we know that will cost us between $25 and $30 million. So we also have to find money to pay for that. So those are the things that are on the horizon. It's all growth. But for us, it's really important, like Hope said, to keep the money that we have, but it's also important to make sure that we're honoring teachers the way that we honor anyone in any other field, by paying them more when they have more experience, by paying them higher salaries when inflation goes up, and beyond.
Yeah, so thank you, Rakaya. I mean, I think it's really important to note that the task force, right from the beginning, expanded kind of the mission of the task force and talked about compensation and not just pay, which laid the foundation for the next win that Under 3 DC Coalition had, which was healthcare. And the scales that we sent, or the schedules that we sent, included accounting for experience, right? And so again, you can come back to those initial conversations and continue the good fight on those areas. So Rakaya, Hope, both of you, is there something that happened that was unexpected, but it actually turned out to be a good thing during this fight?
I mean, I would say healthcare is one of them. That's the biggest one. In terms of other things that were expected but were a good thing, one thing that we did, which we knew was a smart idea, but then we got to see how smart it was when it happened, was that we tied early educator salaries to our public school teachers' salaries, which are under contract. They're unionized and they're under contract, and they renegotiate that contract every 3 years. So when their contract goes up, our salaries automatically go up. So early childhood educators. So one thing that was unexpected was that the district finally negotiated the contract that they had been delayed on for public school teachers. And these salaries are actually higher than what we passed in law and what we agreed on the task force, because just in the interim, the teachers union increased their salaries. And so we were able to see not only an increase, but an increase even more than we expected, which I think was the product of having really thought out, like, what is our mechanism and how are we going to make sure that we're paying teachers and accounting for inflation, rather than just putting some numbers in law and letting them stay static. I think that was one expected and unexpected outcome.
Thank you. So any final comments, Hope or Rakaya, you want to give as we begin to wrap up tonight, this evening?
The only other thing that I'll note, and we didn't talk about all of the things that we did, there's so many, but one thing that was really, really, really important to us was that we were doing this advocacy in a way that anyone who could benefit could participate in. And so for our educators who are monolingual Spanish speakers who maybe don't speak English, or they don't feel comfortable or confident in speaking English, we wanted to make sure that every space was accessible to them, and that they were able to take a leadership role, and they did. So we made sure that the task force was interpreted into Spanish, and all the materials were translated into Spanish, which is reminding me that I'm talking too fast for the translator. When we had our task force meeting, you could see all the members of the community who had signed on to listen in, and the majority of them were Spanish speakers, and the questions came from Spanish speakers. And that means that our work was informed by Spanish speakers in a way that it would never have been if we hadn't made sure that we fought for it to be accessible. And I will say it was a fight, and it shouldn't have had to be. So that's one thing I will note, is that we wanted to make sure when we looked around, we had to make sure that we were going out of our way to make sure that all the members of our community could be part of this work.
So, Rakaya, you're speaking fast because you're very passionate about this and you're trying to get everything in. Hope, do you have any final words you want to share before we begin to wrap?
Yeah, so I was laughing at Rakaya's face because when the question came up of what were some of the unexpected, like the unknowns, so healthcare was actually one that I wanted to push forward as well. Unexpected, but we did appreciate the fact that it came up and it went through. As far as closing remarks, I just want to just remind everyone, just keep it in the forefront. It's going to have to be a fight. We're going to have to continue to organize. The fight does not end because the year ends. It is going to be an ongoing battle, and we do need educators, parents, and parents to align with our educators, because the educators have been doing this for such a long time, and it's going to be important that we really pull those parents in so that they can show their strength in numbers as well, right? But just really committing to this process, because it is a process, and just be willing to bear with us as we go through and get the updates and get that information, get the correct information out is just probably one of the biggest things I just want to keep at the forefront of everyone's mind when we ask you all to come out and speak at events, and when we're trying to get you all to mobilize. It's not because we just want to see you all out in pretty pictures. It's because it really makes a difference when we show up in numbers and we're able to shut down a street, and we're able to show up and pack out the council member's office, and it really makes a big difference. And also, we have to be able to support each other across state lines as well. It doesn't just end here. We have to be able to collab across states. So that's it.
Thank you, Hope. Thank you. Such important words. I think we've seen too many examples of not keeping our foot kind of on the gas and rollbacks happening. So we've learned from that, and we have to continue to push forward. So there are so many strategies for winning advancement toward universal child care system, ballot measures, elections, like, okay, Olay and ballot measures. You know, we saw elections and lawsuits that happened in, I believe, DC and Ohio. And so it's all up to us to build powerful bases to overcome roadblocks for childcare and to unite with the workforce with parents. You heard all those strategies being employed tonight, and you see with persistence and that they actually result in change. So we're really excited. And we want to talk a little bit about the next year and preview and what's going to happen. We are a popular ed series. We call it Pop Ed. So watch for an email from either Community Change, Child Care Change Makers, or Child Care for Every Family Network. Mark your calendars for January 18th, 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern. So registration links will be in your emails. Again, January 18th, our next Pop Ed series. Look for an email from one of those organizations. Continuing on, save the date. Very important. Day without child care. We are trying to drive home that child care is indeed, as people say, the workforce behind the workforce. Without child care, nothing else can really happen. And so that's Monday, May 13th, 2024. There's a QR code right there. Take out your cameras, scan it, mark it, get involved, learn more. This is sponsored by Child Care Change Makers and Community for Change. I just want to hold this slide for 1 second, give people a chance to pull out their cameras, get that QR code. Oh, Rakaya's baby. And scan it. But this is a very important day to drive home the importance of the work that women of color largely do every day. Okay. Grassroots assembly. If you want to come somewhere, get involved, be motivated, be in space, be inspired by other change makers. Keep watching for more information to happen next fall, 2024. Date to be announced for the Grassroots Assembly. Important time to organize, to learn, to really get motivated, to learn what's happening across the country and to make change. And then, email Congress. There's a lot on the table right now, right? There's a lot going on. We know that we were on the path to some potential great wins at the federal level, and now we're going to have to fight every step of the way. So make sure that you are engaging, emailing your congressperson, and then you can go to this website and it can help you with that process. So thank you. So it's been a great time, and I appreciate it from our sponsors. Again, from Child Care for Every Family Network, Child Care Changemakers, and Community of Change. I am Marla Dean. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending time with us. We appreciate you, and we look forward to the wins across the country and sharing that with each other. Be well, and Happy New Year.
If folks
Happy
are
New
open
Year.
to it, I would love to do a little screenshot photo. If you want to come off camera, we've started doing that in some of our meetings, and I've just really enjoyed it as a fun way to celebrate. I'm trying to move the caption thing though, and it's not moving. Well, captions might be in the way of some folks, but that's okay. Is everybody on who wants to be on? All right. We only got one screen, so we only need to do this once. Now smile brightly. 1, 2, 3. Fantastic. Thank you.
Excellent. Good night, good day, good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world.
I don't think we have anybody from Hawaii, so probably evening
Okay.
or early evening
Okay.
everywhere.
For everyone, okay.
Yeah.
I make no assumptions.
Fair point, fair
Margaret.
point.
Thank you, Michelle. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. I'm so glad to see your face. All right, I'm gonna hit end and it's gonna like cut everybody off, so don't feel bad.
Yes.
Night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.